Hey, Husker fans, this is Sam McKewo'n with the Omaha World-Herald, Big Red Today, and Omaha.com. This is the three keys. Can you see the three there? Yeah. To the Nebraska-Minnesota game this weekend. The Huskers are 2-4, and they have a chance to make a bowl game. What do you think of that? And it's pretty interesting that the season sort of switched so quickly from 1-4 and holy crap, if they lose to Purdue, boy, what a rough season this is going to be, to 2-4. Hey, they might win. They might win a couple in a row, and that's absolutely true. They are playing a Minnesota team that at the beginning of the season, you might have looked at that game and had a lot of worry and concern, and you would have been right to do so because Minnesota was coming off of an 11-2 season and was really, really good last year and was probably going to be fairly good this season too. COVID probably hit Minnesota harder than most because Minnesota had to change out so much of its defense that graduated and went to the NFL, and they lost out on spring practice to kind of practice together. And Minnesota's defense, as a result, is really young, and it is really inexperienced, and they're probably going to have some more injuries this weekend. And so the defense you're going to see from Minnesota this weekend is probably not a Power 5 defense. It really hasn't been a Power 5 defense all year. They've been a work in progress, but at this point, I got to be honest. I think what they're working with is low G5 and middle of the pack FCS defense, and I don't mean that as a knock. I think that's just where they're at in terms of their injuries and their experience and just the caliber of high-level players on that side of the ball. And so our three keys start with this. Nebraska needs to run the football, and they need to run the football downhill with their running backs, and if they have an opportunity to do so with their quarterbacks, they need to do that as well. Minnesota is giving up, and you almost have to rub your eyes to believe this, 9.36 yards a carry on first down. 9.36 yards. There's no Big Ten defense that's even remotely close to that over the last 10 years. I'm sure there has never been a Big Ten defense that gave up 9.36 yards a carry on first down. Maybe, I don't know, somewhere in the 1900s. But it's startling to behold. They've really struggled to stop the run game. They struggled to stop it against Purdue, against Maryland, against Michigan. These aren't necessarily Wisconsin that we're talking about here. And they'll struggle when they play Wisconsin next week, if they play Wisconsin next week. They struggled against Iowa, too. Nebraska's got to find a way to get a push and to get into those defensive linemen who then get back into those linebackers and just bust off some big runs. Now, it's possible that Minnesota will say, screw it. We're going to put 8 guys in the box. We're going to put 9 guys in the box. So we're going to make you try to beat us downfield with the throw. That's always possible. You have to account for that possibility. But at the same time, I honestly think Nebraska can run the ball against Minnesota with even 8 guys in the box. I think there comes a point where a defense is just really worn down or really inexperienced or knocked around with COVID. And I think that's kind of where Minnesota is at this point. It's not going to surprise me if Nebraska runs for more than 200 yards in this game. I think if they run for 100 or less, they're in a danger zone. They're in a danger zone. And I don't think that's going to happen. So I think Nebraska's first goal is to just simply run the ball. And usually we have a little bit more nuanced key, but I think the actual act of doing it and then doing it well is a great, great start. The second key to this one is beat Minnesota on first and second down. The Gophers are really good on third down. They've converted more than 50% of their third downs this year into first downs. And the reason they do that is because they do a really good job of staying in manageable down situations. So they're often in 3rd and 3 or less, or 3rd and 5. And when you're in those alleyways, so to speak, you got pretty much the whole playbook open to you. You can throw that little backside slant. You can run the football downhill. You can do a little zone read. You can throw a flare to your tight end or whatever. When you're in 3rd and 5 or less, you can pretty much do what you want to do with your playbook. You're not stuck on 3rd and 14, knowing that you have to throw the football. And so Nebraska needs to win on first and second down. They have to get Minnesota behind the sticks a little bit, put them behind the chains, get some tackles for loss, get some sacks, and if they can do that, then I think Minnesota's going to have a much harder time. I don't think they're going to hold Minnesota under 40%. in their third down conversions. Minnesota, like I said, has been pretty good this year at that. But don't let them have 75%, right? So don't have this be one of those games where they go 10 of 15 and they're able to hold on to the ball for 35 minutes because that's what they want to do. They know, A, that holding on to the ball shortens the game, and B, they also know that their defense has to be protected. I think if Nebraska gets 12 drives against Minnesota's defense, by the way, I don't think they will, but if they did, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska scored on 7 of those drives. And it wouldn't surprise me if 5 of those were touchdowns. I mean, I think the more drives that Minnesota's defense has to face, the worse it's going to be for Minnesota. And so they know that. And so they're going to try to limit this game. They're going to try to keep it to 8 drives or 9 drives. And so imagine, playing against a basketball team that plays kind of a 4 corners offense. That's kind of what Minnesota's going to try to do from a philosophical standpoint. And so Nebraska needs to win on first and second down so they can get Minnesota off the field. The thing that Minnesota wants to do is hold on to the ball and sort of eat clock. Even if they have a drive that doesn't end up in points, if it goes for, 6 plays or 7 plays or 8 plays and 35 yards, they'll take that because they ate 4 minutes off the clock. And so Nebraska needs to try to take some chances on first and second down and try to get some tackles for loss so they can get Minnesota off the field. The third and final key in this particular game is shock of shocks. Nebraska actually has a special teams advantage in this one. Minnesota special teams has struggled this year in part because of COVID. They don't really have a kicker. They sort of do, but he hasn't really attempted many kicks this year. They had a punter who was out earlier in the season, probably because of COVID. And so they've kind of done the Rolodex through the punters. They've had a couple of situations where their coverage units haven't been great. Their return units haven't been great. And so, again, Minnesota's just down a lot of players. They're pretty depleted. I think you kind of got to tip your cap to them that they're willing to play the game. And obviously they are because we're on the eve of the game and they're coming. So you have to appreciate that about Minnesota and PJ Fleck, that they're willing to do it. They probably could just bail out of it, but they chose not to because they've already been off for 2 weeks. So they'll be fresh. I mean, they'll be relatively fresh, but they won't necessarily be that deep, and they're not that experienced a team. Fleck, I think, kind of knew that year 3 was going to be a peak year for him and a peak year for the team because they had all the Tracy Clays and Jerry Kill guys on defense, and then Fleck had recruited some nice players on offense, and all that group blended together. It was a nice blend, and they had a really good team. They were always going to be hitting the reset button a little bit in year 4. It was probably destined to be a 6 or 7 win season. As it is, they're 2-3, and they're probably going to have that again next year, where they're going to be a little bit rebuilding, and then they're going to try to ramp it up hardcore going into maybe years 6 and 7 and 8 and beyond. Nebraska's in a similar situation. They just haven't had that peak year, and they probably weren't going to have it based on the attrition that they've had in their program after Mike Riley was fired and Scott Frost took over. And so Nebraska and Minnesota are in very similar trajectories. This was going to be a rebuilding year in some ways. Next year is going to be a little bit better, and then they hope that they really got the thing rolling by 2022. So this is kind of a crossroads game for both teams. I like Nebraska to win it because they have more players healthy, because I think they're in a little bit better place than Minnesota. But those are the 3 keys to watch. And if Nebraska can't run the ball, and they can't, and they allow Minnesota to get in manageable third down situations, I'll just tell you, an upset's possible. Nebraska's a 10.5-point favorite. I like Nebraska by more than that. But if they can't do those things off the top, the Gophers have a chance, and it'd be a very, very disappointing loss for the Huskers if they don't win this one on Saturday. All right, that's what we got for our 3 keys. You can listen to this on omaha.com, Big Red Today, or the Omaha World-Herald, and we'll have full coverage of the game. We'll also have full coverage of the Nebraska-Creighton basketball game tonight. Thanks, Husker fans.